Welcome to the Delmarva Almanac. Each week we connect you to the best of Delmarva. I'm your host, Dana Kester McCabe. A few years ago, I was hiking the dune trails at Cape Henlopen State Park when I noticed a small boat sidled up to one of the large tankers in Delaware Bay. I could just barely make out a man climbing up a rope ladder onto the larger vessel. I wondered out loud at what might be going on out there when a friend I was with told me about river pilots. I have found them fascinating ever since. For those who do not know about this amazing profession, let me tell you a little bit about it. Pilots are boat captains who specialize in guiding visiting ships through the often challenging and changeable waters of the bays and rivers leading to busy harbors. They board the ships and take over, serving as the boat's captain until they safely reach their destination, and then help them navigate back out to sea when they depart. Pilots have to know how to handle increasingly complicated maritime technology and ever-changing waterways. They are crucial to the shipping industry, which is one of the driving engines of the world economy. Aspiring pilots go through a daunting training process that takes as long as that of a surgeon. A college education at a merchant marine academy is followed by several years working up to first mate, then master, and then junior pilot. This is followed by an impressive test during which the candidate actually creates several nautical charts from scratch and from memory. These must include detailed descriptions of the channels, currents, buoys, and hazards found on the body of water where they hope to work. Once certified, a senior pilot must also be exceptionally physically fit and have the nerves of a trapeze artist in order to climb a rope ladder several stories tall in heavy seas and stiff winds. A fall can be fatal. Another risk they face is that occasionally, after leading a departing vessel back out into the open waters of the ocean, sometimes the conditions are too rough for them to disembark. These pilots might find themselves a bored passenger taking a cruise halfway around the world before they can make passage back to their home port. There have been river pilots since the days of the early Phoenicians. The first pilots in colonial America were natives. There is a long tradition of pilots in Europe, so it is no surprise that the profession followed their fleets to the New World. Shipping companies traveling the Delaware Bay have employed local pilots since 1650, and on the Chesapeake since 1661. The first European Chesapeake Bay pilot was an Englishman named John Clark. Spaniards, wanting to claim the region for their own, took him captive when he boarded their ship to assist them through the waters off the Virginia Capes. When he refused to guide their fleet through the shoals of the lower bay in order to conquer the area, they took him across the Atlantic to spend several years in a Spanish prison. Eventually he made his way back to England, and then the notable sailor served as a mate on the Mayflower's famous voyage to Plymouth, Massachusetts. Early on, local watermen often competed with the officially sanctioned pilots to reach vessels needing assistance first and earn their fee for guiding them. By 1720, this problem was addressed by the legislature, and licensing for pilot captains was clarified. This was updated again with the Pilotage Act of 1755, which set prices, schedules, and the requirements for being a licensed pilot. It also set rules for all commercial vessels entering the Chesapeake Bay, requiring them to pay to be guided by a pilot. Those that tried to save money and follow another ship who had already hired a pilot were charged half price when they reached the harbor. Captains who tried to navigate the waters on their own did so at considerable risk to life and property. The wreckage of their ships tells the tale of their hubris or penny pinching, or both. If you've just joined us, this is the Delmarva Almanac. I'm Dana Kester McCabe, and this is the story of Chesapeake and Delaware pilots. Just prior to the Revolutionary War, county courts took over the appointing of port wardens, harbor masters, and pilots. It was during this era that the pilot profession became even more dangerous. During the Revolution and the War of 1812, 1/3 of all Maryland and Virginia pilots were killed by the British Navy while trying to coerce their services. After the war, pilots began to organize themselves and advocate for better pay and working conditions. On April 9, 1792, Delaware River pilots went on strike. The port wardens threatened to bring in strikebreakers. The pilots responded by announcing they would sell their boats and quit, leaving the shipping lanes frozen without qualified pilots. The strike was then settled, and the pilots' demands were granted. The shipping industry supported a burgeoning economy of shipbuilders and other ancillary businesses on Delmarva. Pilots became highly respected and wealthy. In the 1870s, it was not unusual for as many as 12,000 vessels a year to stop for pilots near the breakwater of Cape Henlopen. Unfortunately, with all that traffic came numerous shipwrecks. Boats have mechanical failures. Sometimes they hit unseen hazards underwater. Sometimes they collide. One Lewis pilot, Jacob Teal, survived a ship that burned to the waterline after being hit by lightning. There were so many deaths associated with shipping accidents near Lewis, Delaware, that quite a few sailors were buried in unmarked graves among the dunes there. It has been said that storms would often reveal the bones of those poor unfortunates. And, as in neighboring communities up and down the coast, the salvage or wrecking business was a common occupation, attracting many a down-on-their-luck fortune hunter. Pilots were often the first responders to maritime disasters. This was even more dangerous than their usual tasks. During a terrible blizzard in March of 1888, the 7-man crew of the Enoch Turley had to be rescued near the Lewis breakwater. It was a Delaware River pilot boat out on a mission to assist other stranded boats. That day, the number of rescued seamen rose from 7 to 178, with the crews from several other ships in trouble in the lower Delaware Bay. The sailors aboard the Enoch Turley survived that harrowing experience, but they were not so lucky when a year later, during another storm, they were swept out to sea, never to be seen or heard from again. A Philadelphia newspaper reported the plight of their families who had not only lost their loved ones, but were now left destitute. Losses from storms had taken its tolls on the industry, and the owners of the Enoch Turley only had resources enough to rebuild their own boat, so they could not help the families. Tragedies like this led to the formation of the Delaware Pilots Association in 1896. In this case, it also led to the construction of an improved breakwater in Lewis. Legend has it that the ghost ship Enoch Turley can be seen along the waters near Lewis on stormy nights, trying to make its way back to safe harbor. Pilots are part of an ancient, time-honored tradition, serving as unsung heroes on the waters that surround us. Today, the pilots who guide ships through the Chesapeake and Delaware estuaries and the C&D Canal are also an important part of our Homeland Security Force, being the first American eyes and ears on incoming cargo vessels from around the world. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, visit our website, delmarvaalmanac.com/history. Well, that's all for this edition of the Delmarva Almanac. Be sure to follow us on Facebook or Twitter, and next week join us to learn more about our local culture and get connected to our natural wonders. We'd like to thank our community partners, the Friends of Delmarva Public Radio, and our underwriters for their help in bringing this program to you, our audience. If you'd like to become an underwriter for this program, visit delmarvaalmanac.com/support. Our theme music was provided by Brightside Studio. This show has been a Moonshell production. Thanks for listening. Until we meet again, may the rhythms and tides of Delmarva bring you good fortune.